Why indecision made you smarter. Indecision can seem like a wholly undesirable trait, but research shows it may actually lead to smarter judgment. In the TV series The Good Place, the character Shiri Enegan is defined by his inability to make even the simplest of decisions, from choosing what to eat to proclaiming love for his soulmate. The very idea of making a choice often results in a serious stomachache. He is stuck in continued analysis paralysis. We meet Chidi in the afterlife and learn that his indecisiveness was the cause of his death. While standing in the street, endlessly equivocating on which bar to visit with his best friend, an air conditioning unit from the apartment above falls on his head, killing him instantly. You know the sound that a fork makes in the garbage disposal? That's the sound my brain makes all the time, he says in one episode. And besides making himself unhappy, Shidi's lack of confidence in his own judgment drives the people around him crazy. If that sounds like exaggerated version of you, then you are not alone. Indecisiveness is a common trait. While some people come to very quick judgment, others struggle to weigh up the option and may even try to avoid making a choice at all. Shady shows indecisiveness can be linked to problems like anxiety, yet recent research suggests that it can also have an upside. It protects us from common cognitive errors like confirmation bias, so that when the person does finally come to a judgment, it is generally wiser than those who jump to a conclusion too quickly. This trick is to learn when why and when to break through the inertia while it's holding you back. The enemy of good. Psychologists had various tools to measure indecisiveness. One of the most common questionnaires, the Frost Indecisiveness Scale, asks participants to rate a series of statements on a scale of 1 strongly disagree to 5 strongly agree. They include I try to put off making decisions. I have a hard time planning my free time. I often worry about making the wrong choice. It seems that deciding on the most trivial thing takes me a long time. Using this scale, psychologists have shown that indecisiveness is often a product of perfectionism. Perfectionists are scared of the chain of regret that may come with making the wrong choice, and so they put off making decisions until they feel certain they are doing the right thing. And in some cases, of course, they simply never reach the level of confidence. The frustration this brings can be a barrier to happiness. In general, the higher someone scores on the scale above, the lower they will score on measures of life satisfaction, according to the study by Eric Racing, a professor of psychology at Erasmus University in the Netherlands. They are less likely to endorse statements such as "the conditions of my life are excellent", for example, or "if I could live my life over, I would change almost nothing". Jumping to conclusions. Jumping to conclusions from this result indecisiveness would seem like a wholly undesirable trait. Recent research, however, suggests that the struggle to come to a quick conclusion, as uncomfortable as it maybe can also have an upside, since, since it protects people from some important cognitive biases. Evidence for these benefits comes from a recent paper by Jana Maria Hosfen, a doctoral researcher, and Iris Schneider, a professor of social psychology, and the TU Dresden Technische University Dresden. Rather than using the Frost indecisiveness scale, Husband and Schneider focused on measures of trait ambivalence, which looks more specifically at the thoughts and feelings underlying someone's judgment and decision making, or lack thereof. For example, people are asked to rate statements such as "My thoughts are often contradictory. I often feel torn between two sides of an issue. Sometimes when I think about a topic, it almost feels like I am physically switching from side to side." If this statement resonates with us, then we are probably high in trait ambivalence, says Husband. As you may expect, those high in trait ambivalence take a longer time to make decisions, but Husband and Schneider found that they are also less prone to bias when coming to their judgment. For example, in one experiment, she asked her participants to read a series of scenarios, such as: you meet a person and you would like to find out whether she is an introvert or extrovert. You guess the person is an extrovert. Which of the following two questions would you ask? Do you like spending time at home alone? Do you like going to parties? Many people pick the second question, but this is a sign of the confirmation bias. You are only looking for the information that agrees with your assumption, rather than looking for evidence that you may be wrong. Husband and her colleagues found that the people with high trait ambivalence were less likely to do this. Instead, they chose to interrogate their assumptions in order to make sure they had the information they needed to come to a correct answer. For another experiment, the participants read about an employee, Mr. Muller, who was seeking to get his contract renewed. After making a preliminary decision about whether to allow Mr. Mueller to continue in the role, the participants were given some additional statements, which were ostensibly from industry experts about Mr. Mueller. Some of these statements agree with the participants' initial decision, while others disagree. The participants' task was to rate the credibility and importance of each one. Husband and Schneider found that the people scoring high on ambivalence tended to be more open-minded to the statements that disagreed with their initial point of view, and rated them more highly for their credibility and importance, whereas those who showed little trait ambivalence were more likely to discount them. These findings are important since confirmation bias is one of our most common cognitive errors, preventing us from analyzing evidence rationally in everything from our personal relationships to our political views. Trait ambivalence helps protect us from this kind of oversimplistic thinking, and may also help us with other forms too. These findings are important since confirmation bias is one of our most common cognitive errors, preventing us from analyzing evidence rationally in everything from our personal relationship to our political views. Trait ambivalence helps protect us from this kind of oversimplistic thinking, and may also help us with other forms too. Studies by Schneider, for instance, suggest that people with high trait ambivalence are also less prone to correspondence bias, which is a tendency to ignore the context of someone's behaviors and to instead attribute any failures and successes directly to the person themselves. To give a straightforward example, if someone sleeps over, correspondence bias may lead us to conclude that they are inherently clumsy, an internal factor. Rather than recognizing the slipperiness on the floor, an external factor. Correspondence bias may also lead us to assume that someone struggling in their education simply lacks intelligence, rather than consider the strengths of their financial difficulties or their responsibilities within the family. People with high trait ambivalence are more likely to recognize those other factors than people who form quick and confident judgment. Husband's research should be good news if you ever felt impatient with your inability to come to a quick decision. The general experience of being ambivalent needs to be embraced. She suggests it can give us necessary pause, signaling to us that things are complex and that we need more time to engage in more careful thought about our decision. It is only when this becomes excessive that we face problems. As with most things, there is a balance that needs to be struck. As husbands, that may explain why indecisive people often score lower on those measures of life satisfaction. Their ambivalence when facing important choices has become overwhelming. One simple step may be to set a time limit for your final decision so that you do not spend too much time ruminating on the different options without actually gaining any new insight. Depending on the type of problem you are facing, husband suggests you might even consider turning it into a series of tasks, such as devoting 2 hours to the search for new information, for example, before spending a certain amount of time deliberating. If you still feel paralyzed, you may find inspiration in a study by Stephen Levitt, an economist at the University of Chicago, which examined people's overall happiness after making important life change. If you are still paralyzed, you may find inspiration in a study by Stephen Levy, an economist at the University of Chicago, which examined people's overall happiness after making important life changes. Following up with the participants over the following months, Levitt found many people had taken the plunge in the coin toss had told them to take action. They were more likely to make the life decision, and they reported being significantly happier than those who had simply carried on as before, regardless of whether the coin had told them to or not, without quitting, moving, or getting that tattoo. We can guess that before the study most of these participants had already been thinking carefully about the situation at hand, but their worries about making the wrong choice had prevented them from taking the plunge. The coin had simply acted as a small nudge to finally overcome the ambivalence. The moral of the study, then, is not that we should make all decisions on the wing of toss coin. It is that breaking through your hesitancy at doubt will leave you happier than you may imagine. A good rule of thumb in decision making is whenever you cannot decide what you should do, choose the action that represents a change rather than continuing the status quo, concluded Levy. Like a chili in the good place, we can weigh up all the pros and cons of every situation, and that ambivalence will help us to make wiser choice. Once that ambivalent thinking has served its purpose, however, you must learn to cast it aside, safe in the knowledge that any decision is often better than making no choice at all.